Welcome to another episode of Solstinence. We've officially changed the title for Soul Sustenance, and we hope you all enjoy it. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from that. So for this episode, Joe and I get into really the difference between a big, drastic change in someone's life versus micro shifts and discipline and the slower path of growth, and what that looks like in our experiences with that and different perspectives on it that we hope will be really interesting and valuable to you. And we also have a lot of fun with psychedelics. We get into psychedelics more of specific stories, examples, FDA approved psychedelics, different types of legal licensed psychedelic therapists now, and really have a fun conversation about how that correlates to personal development, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual. So without further ado, we will let you dive right in. Enjoy. The micro adjustments. I think that's a really cool thing. Dr. Matt talked about that, empowerment. Other people I've heard talk about that, where like a pilot in an airplane, just 1 degree off. I think you were mentioning space, and whether it's a plane or if you're a spaceship, even more so, you just one little micro shift continued can make a huge difference if you're thinking in decades and not days. And I think when I think about that, and I think about all the things I've done on my journey to grow, I think taking that from, travel to hardship to psychedelics to breath work to CBT, DBT, antidepressants to physical exercise to hormones to cold plunges to fasting to supplements. There's so many, diet micro shifts in even a 5-minute meditation practice. There's so many micro and macro things I've done. And I think, like we just said, so to anyone listening, Joe and I always do gratitude and intentions before we start recording. And mine was just really about how much I'm embodying part of my dream self that seemed almost unattainable years ago. And it's just more natural than ever. Ways I think, ways I feel, way I feel in my body, my energy, my habits, things are manifesting. And I think the micro shifts, to your point earlier, I think that should not go undervalued. I think that's a really big thing, and it's ties into discipline as well. And I think there's so many ways to look at that, and I'm curious what your thoughts are right now on that topic, since you were the one that brought it up.
Great question. I was just contemplating the difference of just internally, like hearing I was interested in talking about that today because it's been something I've noticed in my life recently, but hearing it back as a question, the different thoughts that causes is fascinating to me, and just reminding me of the usefulness of dialogue, the usefulness of being surrounded and having relationships to discuss, to dialogue, to dive into, even just to express the gratitudes is so useful on our journey in our life and our growth, to provide a mirror, to provide reflection. There's so much that I've become grateful for, even through our dialogue and our relationship, that things that I wouldn't have noticed had we not taken the time to bring them up and point it out, and just the shift that can be. But to your question, I've been really reveling this week in I'm currently in a situation doing an event right now that I've participated in about a year ago, and have through that opportunity really been able to notice how differently I've showed up now as opposed to a year ago, how drastically different my internal state is now than it was a year ago. And it's really
Mm,
highlighted that point of because a year ago, like I knew that there was change happening. There was a lot of friction. That's kind of part of the event is in a safe environment and a supportive environment, creating a certain amount of friction that really allows us to discover opportunities to shift, opportunities to grow, opportunities to step into our subconscious and more deeply in that the connection to source that we have through our subconscious, and that this this much deeper part of us, this much more vast experience than our conscious mind can really perceive or understand. And and so I knew that there was through that experience there were some micro changes. There were some things that came up in me and some small shifts, and I was grateful for that. It felt good. But I was observing other people that felt like that they were having these dramatic shifts in
mm,
who they were. It was like a light switch going from, you know, a dark room to a completely light room. It was just a very stark difference one day from who they were the next day because of some big internal change or shift that had happened. And I remember even at times, and this has been replicated at other times in my life, but this is a very clear example. Um, Being just a year in the timeline, I remember feeling not judgmental toward myself necessarily, but feeling really excited for them that they'd had such a huge shift, and kind of wishing that I had had a massive shift in my life, and as opposed to these kind of micro shifts that I was feeling, these adjustments to how I was showing up. And yet, I've got an amazing frame this this time in going back into a same situation and seeing how different I am. Those micro shifts that happened a year ago have turned into
mm,
dramatic shifts in my
mm,
life this year. As you were saying, like just that those incremental course corrections, those little changing just a degree or two
mhm,
over time, compounding, has turned into I'm in a completely different place, in a completely different world internally, and therefore externally, how I'm able to show up, how I'm able to be in the moment, express myself with a clarity and an authenticity that was honestly not capable of last year, even just a year ago, and just seeing the this dramatic shift that I was almost wishing for a year ago, like has happened. It just
mhm,
happened incrementally over
mhm,
time, but it started with those little micro shifts, and I think that's something that's sadly really easy to miss in life. I think this happens in the majority of our lives, probably consistently in different ways, and I don't know how often we are attuned into actually being able to see that, or that we're in a similar enough situation further down the road later in our timeline that we're actually able to use that as a mirror and see the stark difference that has happened because of those micro shifts. So,
mm,
really interested in kind of exploring that, celebrating that. Um, I've been I've been really encouraged and grateful for the awareness of that and just the celebration that is that massive change, and and a bit humbled by the negative feelings that I felt a year ago, and kind of grass is greener type situation, looking at someone else's life saying, man, I wish I could have something like what they experience, and realizing now that I am experiencing that. It was just in a different timeline, and in a different trajectory, maybe in a way. I think that also brings up for me how often we think we understand what's going on in somebody else's life too.
Hmm.
Like I saw a big shift in them, but I have no idea what that looked like for them internally. You know, like it might have felt like a micro shift to them as well.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of a grounding reality as well. There's just there were some assumptions made in my head, in my in baggage as it were, even though I was growing, like I was still stepping into these limiting thoughts and these limiting beliefs of like they're growing more than me and they're more capable of growth than me or whatever that silliness is.
Hmm.
Um but but very currently in this moment, very aware of um the dramatic changes that have happened in just a year in my own life, and that's been really neat. So I was interested in how you've seen that in your own life or clients' lives, and um, yeah, what that brings up.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. And I've seen it too. I see it in both of us, and we've mirrored
Mm-hmm.
that back to each other.
Mm-hmm.
How much we've grown. I think especially this calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
Just even sitting here listening to you share that right where I am right now in my body, checking in with my mind, my heart, my emotions, thoughts, my body, my senses, how I feel in my body energetically, and such a stark difference from the rocket ship of grief and pain that this New Year's for me kicked off with,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, man, um, so many things seem to be uh, culminating, um, coming to fruition. And I think that's cool because I know other people that we know, I can sometimes have a tendency to have that, bright light, boom, big thing. I'm, sensitive. I feel very deeply. And I know sometimes someone very close to us, sometimes like we joke because we're so opposite. And it is more of like a slower pace and micro shifts, one thing at a time, more of a fence sitter. Um, and I'm aware of both. I think there's ups and downs to both. Sometimes the big shift for me sticks, and I'm just like, wow. And sometimes I have the big shift, and I was thinking this in my mind as you were
Hmm.
speaking, where it's like, okay, case one, it's like a dark room with a dimmable light, and it just starts really dim, and like every day has like a micro adjustment, and then all of a sudden you look around and you're like, right now, like, wow, the room is lit up.
Hmm.
But it took me some time. And I think other times with someone who's like, for me, sometimes I have that big shift, and sometimes it sticks. When it doesn't stick, though, it's like the lights go on and then like a light bulb pops, or it's like kind of like strobe flutters and it's like do 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 do, and then it kind of goes dim and has to work its way back up almost.
Hmm.
And then sometimes it sticks. And so to me, I think of there's a YouTube channel I listen to called Absolute Motivation. I love that channel, and I work out to videos of them a lot. And one thing that is just etched in my mind the last few weeks of listening to like three videos from them on repeat. And I think it's a woman speaking, and I don't know who it is, but at least I can give credit to that channel. Um, and she's talking a very similar principle that we're talking about. And she talks about how so many people think about and see the outcome, the celebrity, the big movie, the success, the big hit, all these, the lights on.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing in culture, and I think that's a human thing in nature where we get so fixated on that, and it's like not only is that not what you actually want, you want the person that you become by trying to attain the thing that you're seeking. And I feel like that's part of what I feel you and I are talking about, because it's like, yeah, it's cool to think, feel, be, behave, have this or be this person or this way that seems ideal or better than how we used to behave. But like that light flickering on, or just if you were granted a wish and had it, like when people win the lottery, like they lose their money typically within a year, they go bankrupt. Like you haven't put the discipline, the ugly,
Mm,
hard, sometimes lonely, exhausting work in to become the person who can maintain that and really embody that.
yeah.
And so I feel like that's really honoring. um if I come full circle, I think it's honoring both sides of the spectrum, because my theory is that when it's slow, that's most common. But I think also when the light switch flicks on, I don't know if it's necessarily because someone's sensitive. I think it's because they maybe did all that work. And like you said earlier, we were taught change can happen in an instant. And I do believe that. Maybe it takes you 20 minutes or 20 years to change in one day. And
Mm,
that light bulb didn't go off for certain reasons. And I think either it's you finally got and were being and had all that work catch up to that moment where it shifts. But I don't
mm,
believe that that shift just spontaneously happens like magic. I think that is actually the other side of the same coin,
yeah.
you know? And so I
Yeah.
think it's honoring both of those. And I see both of those, that in you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's really cool. It's really cool. Like I'll give one example. Um, Hormones, right? My Hashimoto's that I discovered this year, on top of the other beautiful challenges that the universe and God has thrown at me in my life. And I've been on the nutrition journey, the fitness journey, the spiritual journey, the health journey, all these things, and had never discovered hormone supplements. And it's like, for me, I don't know if I would have found that had I not done all these things. And if I even found that diagnosis and them taking a pill, I wouldn't have been doing all these other habits that would have supported this massive increase in strength and energy and
Yeah.
clarity. It's like now I know how to aim it with stability and character because I've done all this stuff. Um, and I thought about this actually. It reminds me this year in the last few months, especially because I've been taking these hormones and it's massively changed. Like my aura, my sleep, my strength, my endurance, my clarity of my thought, like all these things. And it reminds me of when I had stamina when I was in my 20s.
Hmm.
But when I was in my 20s and had that energy and stamina, I didn't have the wisdom, I didn't have the ethics, I didn't have the values, I didn't have the growth, I didn't have the principles, I didn't have all the scars. And it's like, in a sense, I feel like the old man who now all of a sudden has all the internal cool stuff of wisdom and strength and some experience in life, but now I'm having energy and like this just fuel to marry that, and it's really fucking cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That makes a lot of sense. Clearly put.
yeah. Um, yeah, I'm wondering what comes up for you, what thoughts you have in that, or if anything else is organically coming up for you.
I think that's a great further explanation and reality to the dichotomy of both of those. It's not inherently one or the other. I think it's often a combination of both.
Mm.
And I think sometimes too, like that, as you were saying, and maybe I'll just emphasize that point. Like sometimes there is a massive shift. We have a window that we see this big change, and then we go through a process of growing into that change and making that a reality that happens with micro shifts and small improvements over time to get to that amazing space that we saw, whether that was in an experience or a shift or a vision, whether that was through, we've talked a lot about psychedelics.
Hmm.
Those have been part of our journey for a while, but this year I feel like that there's been a lot more understanding, a lot more um, ability to see the how that's facilitated growth and inspired some of that.
Hmm.
And I think that's another good example for me of this, that there'll be times with psychedelics where I can see something dramatically other, see a massive shift, and then coming out of that experience, the next phase of life is growing into that vision,
Mm,
that thing, that reality that I saw. And so it's like kind of the lights on,
mm,
lights off thing. Like through that experience, you're in this like, massive room or something like that. Like it's and the lights come on, you're like, this is incredible. And then you come out of that, and
mm,
but you have changed. Like there's things that have shifted in that
mm.
experience,
I like that.
and choices that you can keep. Obviously you don't have to show up in a positive trajectory out of that, but if you choose to, you can begin having micro changes and shifts that with consistency, that's actually where you end up, is back in that place that is fully illuminated and huge. And so I think it's really interesting the different way that dichotomy, or those two sides to that, actually end up playing out in our lives. And there's not a right or a wrong or a better or worse about it. I think it's so often suited to our own individual path, which is so unique. I mean, each of our journeys is such an individual pathway, and the way that we hang on to things, the way that we form baggage, the way that we hang on to baggage, the way that we experience growth, like all those things are very unique. And so these are more than anything just like principles that I've seen kind of replicated in my life over and over, but in different ways. And also those around me, I've seen them replicated as well, but it's a little bit different from for everyone. The more acceptance and openness I can have to the reality of growth, regardless of the form it takes, the more I can stay out of judging myself for feeling other because I'm not growing like somebody else, the more consistent that growth is. And the more I'm
Mm,
able to be connected to the joy, to the gratitude,
hmm.
to the highlights of what's going on, even in the friction. And that's been an incredibly meaningful piece for me of
Mm.
kind of understanding these uh, different ways we transform from the inside out.
Yeah, man, that's well said. And I like how you mentioned the psychedelic piece as well. I think we did an episode on that before, and it just keeps coming up in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Discussions, conversations, whether it's professionally, and one of the big things we talked about in the episode was just the beautiful, relationship that is being cultivated between clinical and spiritual worlds.
Mm.
And I was just getting my haircut yesterday, and right before I went to a beautiful work lunch, that ended up being so energetically way better than a work lunch. It was just like a life lunch. It was amazing. And the girl cutting my hair, we just got right into talking about psychedelics and what we did in the past, and legally what's happening, and from psilocybin to
Mm-hmm.
ketamine to different things, and also MDA, MDMA. I don't know much about that, but I know that's making more of its way into the clinical realm as well. And we just had a beautiful uplifting conversation about it. And I asked her the question, and I've asked a lot of people this, and I've even had people ask me this as well. Is I asked her, I said, point blank, do you feel that when you did psychedelics, because she actually did them when she was quite young, I was kind of
Mm.
surprised, and we had a good chuckle about it. I said, since you did those many years ago, do you feel that it changed you forever in a positive way? And she's like, oh, she didn't hesitate. She said, oh, yeah, oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
And I said, same here. You know, I think I did ayahuasca 8 years ago. And it just changed me, my subconscious default way of being. Something shifted, something opened. It felt like my heart, me as a soul, my mind with like the world around me, nature, animals, humans, compassion, empathy, love, perspective. It just like people say, like it opens your mind. I just felt
Hmm.
open and connected. And granted, a lot of that came down, right? But I think there's something so powerful, and it gets me excited why, connected to why it's getting more popular. And I feel like I can't talk about it enough recently. There's so many conversations I'm having with people that maybe they did it years ago, or they've dabbled in, microdosing, or they thought it was crazy and like melted and destroyed your brain and thought it was horrible and it was illegal and it was like, get me as far away as possible. And now they're like asking questions and wait a minute, this is legal. This is legal. There are studies. What's going on? uh, I'm more open to it. I want to learn about it. I want to see the research, see if I can do it safely, and have that positive impact to
Hmm.
decrease anxiety, decrease depression, stress. And so I don't even know where we're going to go with this, but I just it fascinates me, and I think it's so beautiful that the world, at least in our culture, is waking up to it more and more. Um, hmm. I think it's very beautiful. I'm curious, what thoughts do you come up there, on the psychedelic realm?
I think initially one thing I was thinking, I love your word choice on this, like the awakening piece.
Hmm.
But I'm almost immediately reminded of like a reawakening. I mean, these are
Hmm.
things that since we have writings, I mean, since the beginning of writings, there have been cultures experiencing, participating in, choosing to um, participate with psychedelics in different
Hmm.
modalities, different mediums
Hmm.
uh, to overall incredibly powerful uh, responses, incredibly powerful change. There was a reason that it continues to show up throughout our history and throughout and all over the world. Tons of different types, tons of different mediums and modalities in that,
Hmm.
but it is very consistent. Um, and very consistently used as a pathway towards growth, as a pathway toward reduction in negative emotions, negative modalities of carrying states. And I feel like that's something that we are awakening, reawakening to kind of in this culture, that there's more pathways than we've been practicing in. That there's a lot of things that we've shut off ourselves to, whether that be our connection with nature, the physicality, getting out of our heads, participating with our body, whether
Hmm.
that be through working out or yoga or breath work. That there's been, I feel, a large resurgence in those modalities as well. That's
Hmm.
become a lot more mainstream, a lot more consistent, and I notice a stark difference in people who do participate in those things. There's an openness, a receptivity, um, a joy, a graciousness, a an excitement even, um,
Hmm.
about the present, towards the future, that that is maybe not unique to them, but is consistent with people that I've experienced who have participated with psychedelics, with getting out of their head, with
Hmm.
getting back to, um, being connected to their body, connected to their subconscious, and I think I'm really grateful that this is becoming something that is more studied,
Hmm.
for multiple reasons. I think it's incredibly helpful to for us to know more of what's scientifically going on there, so that we can do it safely, that we can do it in a secure way, without the threat of causing physical harm.
Hmm.
And but the other side of that is, with the more research and study, it's becoming more legal. that there's more modalities, there's more options
Hmm.
there, it's more accessible,
Yeah.
and it's losing a lot of what I feel is pretty recent in modernity, like a lot of its negative stigmatism.
Hmm.
It's losing a lot of even its kind of hippie vibe. It's just like, only people who don't want to participate in life or the world are doing that. And I feel quite the opposite. I feel
Mm.
it's very much people who are desiring to participate in a more
Mm.
consistent, in a more holistic, in a more full way. Um, they're more interested in having a more complete experience of life and not just focusing on one tiny aspect of their career or their finances or building an empire. Nothing wrong with those things, but they're just a slice of our human experience. They're not
Mm.
what we're here for. um and and so I'm really excited about that. I Earlier this week, I think this kind of connects to what we were talking about before, as far as the incremental change or seeing big change, and then that uh, sparking a fire inside, encouraging us that we can incrementally grow towards that big change. It was somebody who I was kind of surprised. I didn't actually expect a conversation about psilocybin to come up, and they were doing it through a legal way. There's a company that we've actually talked about them before. I think it's Schedule 35. I think they're out of
Mm.
California. A company that does psilocybin in a legal way. They put it in. They sell different teas, I think, and different chocolates that
Mm.
have it. And so he'd had an experience, and as someone who's experienced a lot of uh, physical pain and tightness in an area of their body that's been very immobilizing, very debilitating, associated with the pain and the lack of movement.
Mm.
Um, they had an experience on psilocybin that was really amazing in not just mentally, but physically. They had a very euphoric experience and a complete cessation of this pain and tightness that it's been
Mm.
decades.
Mm.
They were kind of expressing just like being in that state and like moving in a way they haven't moved
Oh,
in
it's beautiful.
years
Phew.
without pain, and just
Like
like,
goosebumps.
this is plausible. This is possible. Like, I could know this freedom again. I could know this enjoyment, and I think there's a neat window there, because I believe the windows and stuff we see through, or an aspect of the windows and opportunities we see through psychedelics are connecting to something that actually is. And so there's a piece of that that is in us without the
Mm.
psychedelic. Like, the only reason we're able to touch it or see it or experience with psychedelics is that it's already in us, that exists fundamentally within our reality, and we just may not be tapping into it in our current lifestyle and our current mindset. And
Mm.
so that was kind of what I heard him express as well. It's just like, this was a window to a future possibility that I didn't I didn't really believe necessarily was even there anymore. And then moreover than that, that it's something that I can experience now. I already am experiencing a piece of that. This has shown me a window to that place. And how do I tap into that more? How do I orient my life to experience more of this freedom, this flexibility, this movement, this reduction of pain, um, that is clearly possible if it's experienced in that state. And I thought that was really neat and a good example of what excites me about um, psychedelics. What excites me about this shift in our culture.
I'm really excited to respond to that. So that's an amazing story, and I've heard stories about physical pain, whether it's ketamine, psilocybin, ayahuasca. Um, those are the three I know the most about. I know there's other ones, iboga or ibogaine. There's 5-MeO DMT. You get toads involved there. There's obviously LSD acid. There's peyote mescaline. There's now MDMA, which I believe is ecstasy, correct?
Mm-hmm.
MDMA therapist, or that's a developing thing. And when I think about like I'm so excited about it, I want to share a couple stories about like I love how you shared a specific story of, how I see it merging in the clinical world from my own experience of what's happening. I think it's so cool. But, I, whether it's a study and FDA approval, or just the main reasons why people are doing it, and even why I tried it, um, let me know if you have anything to add to this. So for me, it's anxiety, it's PTSD, it's depression, it's rumination. You've got physical pain, um, a lot of social anxiety stuff, right? A more specific anxiety, just overall stress and disconnection from self and world. There's anything else that you think of right now?
For me, hopelessness comes up, but I think
Okay.
the hopelessness corresponds to all the things, and is a reaction to all the things that you just stated,
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
buildup of those,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks.
overwhelm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That totally resonates. Yeah. And so one cool example is a lot of people don't even know this, but there's ketamine clinics popping up all over the country that are
Hmm.
legal, and you get an IV. It's like you're going to like an IV hydration room, but instead of getting vitamins, you're getting ketamine. There's nurses and a doctor there. Um, that's legal. And one of the things that blew my mind about this, so a woman I work with and I had called up and spoken to an office manager at a local ketamine clinic in Laguna Beach. And we also have spoken with another clinic in Costa Mesa. And we were inquiring to see like what's the legal, proven, study based use case here. And the thing that blew my mind the most is the office manager. She said she's been doing this for I think 8 years, and it's
Hmm.
gotten popular in the last year or so. So she's been doing this long before it was a trend or a thing to do that was okay. Is she said that suicidality,
Hmm.
suicidal people, they not only are just okay with it, they welcome it. It's like the bread and butter of ketamine clinics, which for anyone who has any exposure to the psychology, psychiatry, mental health world, that's very unusual. It's
Hmm.
usually suicidal ideations, schizophrenia, and bipolar. It's a whole nother realm. Schizophrenia and bipolar for psychedelics are still no nos, but the suicidal, the ketamine clinic said, yeah, within a week, we do 2 to 3 sessions, which is about an hour, and we have snapped them out, and they're like permanently out of that phase they were in. Not saying it can never happen again, but that in itself is almost magic. That is so 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 rare. That I think is a very cool thing happening in the space. And then Johnson and Johnson, they came up with an FDA approved nasal spray that's actually a form of ketamine called S-ketamine, and that is FDA approved for treatment resistant depression. So the people that have just tried all these things and they're just stuck. And we actually know someone. We had a work lunch with someone who's well respected in Orange County in the mental health community, and they're actually doing that. So we met with the reps, Johnson and Johnson, another facility, and so seeing that happening where people, it's like I'm stuck. If I'm doing it legally, safely, and clinically, Western medicine's like, sorry, we don't know what else to do for you.
Hmm.
And now ketamine's made its way in. It's like, well, wait, yeah, this is a new thing. And so that's another use
Hmm.
case. I also wanted to share. Um, I know psilocybin therapists that are legally licensed to work with psilocybin in multiple states in our country, California included. And I think that's beautiful, where there's degrees on this. It's legal. You have a license to do it. The mushrooms that are used are regulated, um, and you have that support behind just doing it randomly. And I think that's a beautiful part. Is it's environmentally, what's the intention? Why are you doing it? How much are you taking? Where is it coming from? What other stuff's going on for you? I just love that we have more tools now. And I wanted to finish with this piece, and I know we're probably getting close to wrapping up. So, if there's anything else that you wanna jump on, I wanted to share this last piece that, for me personally, and a lot of people I know, either personally or professionally, the spiritual,
Mm.
whether it's the religious God piece or whatever religious
Yeah.
belief someone has, or if it's just from a spiritual approach. And that's also physical too, especially with ketamine, where it's like the body relaxes,
Mm.
physically opens up, pain goes away, and it's this connection with source. And that can happen on different psychedelics. But I think that is a piece that should not go under the wayside,
Mm.
when the clinical world's bridging with it, because that in itself is so powerful to
Mm.
feel that not only did maybe I had faith in God or source, or I believed, and wonderful. With these things, you can actually have a real personal experience that words maybe can't explain, that prove the spiritual God, whatever words you want to throw there, universal energies that so many humans in this world believe in. And I think that in itself is profound. And that's another reason why I'm so excited about this space.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dustin. Um, I do think we need to wrap up, but
Mm-hmm.
I have so much more. We both do on this on this topic that I'd love to talk about. I'm sure it'll come up
Yeah.
again. And I appreciate your attention to and bringing up the spiritual side of
Mm-hmm.
that and the soul piece on that, because there are so many other amazing things that I am excited about in that space. But I think that for me is one of the most powerful and the most significant to it. And it's not it's not secondary or side effect. Like that is just as powerful, as transformative, of a mindset, of an ideology, and of
Mm-hmm.
a modality to show up in this world that is supportive of life, that is supportive of gratitude and joy,
Yeah.
and the options that's created in my life is phenomenal.
Amen.
The choice and agency that supports. So thank you for
Mm-hmm.
your time. This is incredible.
Thank you, Joe. You too. Talk soon, brother.
Sounds great.